We are finally at the lesson portion of today, and that is 6.6 part 3. We're going to be factoring to solve for quadratics. Now, I want to remind you that when we solve for quadratics, it's when we want to solve for the roots. Three situations may occur. There are 0, 1, and 2 solutions in all of these instances. Reminder that you should pause this presentation to give time for work in case you're not at in case you need more time during class. So the first one is talking about what I was referring to, where we have three situations where one there's two solutions, one there's one solution, and one there's no solutions. Take a look at, you remember when you can solve by graphing, by looking at it, and you can simply just look at what coordinates there was. You could solve with the square root method for both these. But these are all easy simply because there is no b value. So what happens when there's a b value? Well, thankfully, we have a new method. We know how to graph. We know how to do square roots. And you should know how to factor, and that's what we're going to be using today. So we're going to go back to the zero product property rule, and that is simply, remember, when you're doing something like this, x could equal 0, y could equal 0, or both could equal 0. We have a situation where we have to remember that when we set that up. However, instead of just looking at one variable, we look at some binomials. So if you want to copy this one example down, that is fine. Let's take a look at the lesson here. Factoring by solving equations. So let's look at the first one. This one is already factored. So you'll notice, hey, it's already split up into two. I want to remind you that so long as 1 equals 0, meaning if that equals 0 or that equals 0, we are good to go. You should remember that technically Mr. Lowe has shown you this before with a split. So if he has something like 4t plus 1 is equal to 0, and then t minus 2 is equal to 0. So what happens is you have two solutions. You can go through it. You subtract 1 from both sides. You get 4t is now equal to negative 1/4. Now this, if you graphed it, would look pretty nasty. Like the fact that you would have negative 1/4, it'd be kind of hard to guess it. And then over here, t is equal to 2. So we have two solutions. You could pause to kind of talk about this. Remember that every slide is followed with a detailed description of what we talked about. And for those students that are wondering about us keeping the smart ink on there, we don't, because the part of the skill is to take notes. And you need to make sure that your notes make sense. Otherwise, you always have this slide right here that shows you everything that I wrote down. Then, we have some practice problems. You can try doing some of those. Pause the video if you need to. And we're going to solve by factoring. So there's one extra step. Yesterday, you should have gotten a problem that looks just like this. There is no equal 0. Okay? So if there's no equal zeros, then all you have to do is make sure that you factor this out first. Whether you split the middle or do the cross method, your choice. So let's go ahead and do it. Let's do the cross, shall we? We have 1 and 1 for the x squared, and then we have the 5 and then the 3. And it's nice and easy because, bam bam, it's going to be 5, 3, it adds up to 8. We're good to go. So my factored out form looks like this. X plus, plus 5 times, and that's a plus. Not sure why it's not writing. Here we go, and then that's x plus 3. Now that's equal to 0. So it should look a lot like the problem that we did before. Okay? So you could split it, or that technically x could be negative 5 or 3. Oh, negative 3. Remember, you have to factor and then you set it equal to 0, which makes it a lot easier. Let's take a look at the next problem real quick. Oh, this is a detailed explanation. Try some out. Factor first, and then solve for what each thing is. You'll notice that C is the harder one that has a variable up front. Today's lesson, we kind of go back to the more basic questions. Pause this. All right. Sometimes you'll get problems where it looks like this, and it's not quite what you want it to be. So we have a problem as such. We don't have it equal to 0. Well, some people are probably raising their hand, already shouting it out. I wonder who they are. For those that don't know, you want to isolate everything, or isolate the 0, or make sure it's 0. So you want to move or get rid of the 18 by subtracting 18 from both sides, mathematically speaking. So then we have 4x squared minus 21x minus 18 is equal to 0. All right, we're in business. We have to factor this boy out. So we got 2, 2. We got 6, 3. I got 12 and 6. That's not going to work, right? So that's not going to work. Let's try 2, 2, and then 6. I already did 6, 3. 18, 18, and 1. That won't work either. So we have to try the 4. 4 and 1. And then we have 6 and 3. And I knew that because 6 and 4, that's going to get us 24. And that's going to get us 3. Can we get this negative 21? Yeah, sure. Make sure the negative is attached to the 6, because 4 times negative 6 gets us negative 24. And that's our answer right there. We got 4, 3, and 1 negative 6. So that means it is 4x plus 3 times x, let's double check, x minus 6 is equal to 0. Okay? So this one has 3 steps. First, make sure it's in standard form, then factor it, then solve it. We're not done yet. We know that this is easy. It's going to be x is equal to 6. Some people can do it in their head now. Now they know that subtract 3, this is negative 3/4. They subtract 3 and divide by 4. If you're starting to develop these shortcuts, just be mindful of order of operation. The signs and what you get for the answer. Let's double check to see if Mr. Lowe got it right, because sometimes I make mistakes. No, what do you know? Did not make a mistake today. Okay, try some of these out. Pause it. You have a word problem here. I'm not going to review this one so much as prepare you to say that there are things that you can look in for that. You have a lesson check with some extra problems. Oh, the slides are out of order. I'll fix that. And this is just kind of for enrichment purposes. And you have one homework slide, which is right here. This is due tomorrow. Hope the lesson made sense. Help each other out.